we're looking at one of Jesus' parables on forgiveness. I will talk you through the parable, but if you want to look it up yourself, that is at Matthew chapter 18, verse 23 and onwards. And Jesus, he's been talking about forgiveness, and he says the kingdom of heaven is like this, and then describes a rather extraordinary situation where there is a king who later is referred to as a lord, but he's decided to make a reckoning of his debts, and he realizes that there's one of his slaves who owes him 10,000 talents, which is an old currency. I'll come to that later. And he comes in and says, you need to pay me. And the slave says, look, I'm very sorry, I just don't have that kind of money. And he says, well, I'll take your wife and your children and all your possessions, and then you can be in prison until you can pay me back. And the guy says, oh, look, please, I will pay you back. Just give me a chance. And at that point, the Lord forgives him, says, okay, right. And so he says, all right, that's fair enough. Now, this same slave then goes out of that room, and he himself is owed money by someone else. And he finds this other person, and he grabs them by the neck. There's this very vivid detail. He grabs them by the neck and says, you owe me 100 denarii. I need that money now. And the person who's being held up says, look, I'm really sorry. I will pay you back, but I don't have that money on me at the moment. And he says, well, no, that's not good enough. And he takes him to the prison, to the judge, who sends him to prison until such time as he can pay him back. And this causes upset in the community of the slaves of this household. And they go back to the king and they say, look, I don't know if you've heard, there's been an argument. And although our friend, he did owe our other friend, 100 denarii, he's ended up in prison. We think this is a bit much. And the master says, hang on a minute. So he brings in the original slave back and says, what are you doing? I forgave you that debt because you asked me. Someone else asks you to have more time to pay, and you don't do anything for them. You take them to prison. If you keep withholding forgiveness like that, how can you feel? How can you be forgiven? Because you are just holding back other people's forgiveness. There's no place in the kingdom of heaven for you when you're behaving like that. And it's quite a dramatic story. I think for once it really is worth going into the kind of details of the Greek money system here, or the money system in the ancient world, because I think it illuminates part of the point of the parable. And that is, the original debt, remember, was 10,000 talents. Now, a talent in itself is an enormous amount of money. There were these great, originally silver ingots, these silver talents. A sort of thing, you build your military budget around. If you're going to be an individual, one talent is like 15 years' salary. So 10,000 talents is an incredible amount of money. For the sake of argument, let's call an average yearly income now to be £20,000 in this country. So if it's 15 years' income, that would be £300,000, and 10,000 worth of that. We're talking of a debt of £300 million. So when we say, oh, you owe me, we revisit that scene knowing that, with the king saying, you owe me money, oh, how much do I owe? £300 million. There is no conceivable universe in which anyone is really expecting that slave to pay. So when he says, oh, look, I haven't got the money now, but I'll pay you back, he can't really mean he hasn't got the money now, but he's just going to whip a few things together and he'll find the £300 million somehow. He may live a life which shows his indebtedness to the king, and he may live authentically that way, but there's no way he is literally paying it back. And so it's about living a kind of life in a recognition that you're indebted to your Lord. However, the second situation I think is different. The figure we get given is 100 denarii. Now a denarius is roughly, and don't read too much into it, but they'd say a typical day's wage. A typical day's wage. So again, if we apply that, average earnings about £20,000 a year, we're talking sort of £6,000. So you owe me, when he goes up to him and grabs him by the throat and says, you owe me £6,000, I need that money. I think we can relate to it as, yeah, that's an enormous amount of money to owe someone. It's not owing someone a fiver or a tenner, this is £6,000. But I think it is, if you like, in the realm of payback ability. We can imagine a situation where a friend lends someone something towards a house or a car or a small business, and they get £6,000 or so between them. And we know we've probably had situations we've heard of where that has caused arguments. But the point is, we're in the realm of kind of granular world where we can conceive of it. It's a conceivably paybackable debt. And he goes nuts because he's not getting the money back. But it's not like for like. And so when the Lord comes, it just shows the ridiculousness of this first slave's behaviour. That if you have been forgiven £300 million, putting someone else in prison because of £6,000, it's absurd. It's just not in the same scheme of things. So let's drag this forward to today. I think what is very acute with, we don't live a world with kings and slaves and stuff like that, but we do often live in a world, or most of us, or a lot of us, live with a kind of grievance sense, a sense that other people are treating us badly and we have been wronged. And often in quite small things, we kind of get frustrated. So our hospital appointment gets cancelled, which is happening a lot because of they're desperately trying to catch up with COVID and they can't quite cope. Or, we have to wait for ages to pick our children up from school because, of course, they're trying to do it in a COVID-safe way. And if you're in a certain mentality of grievance, you can think the kind of world is going up against you. I've turned up here, they've just wasted 15 minutes of my time while I do this. I've taken the day off work to go to that doctor's appointment and I'm not able to go there. There is this sense at the moment, any time, but I think particularly now, a lot of things are going wrong. I'm not allowed to meet up in gatherings of 6. How dare this happen? And there are some real gatherings which we're missing. But if we allow this parable to talk to us, the point is to focus on the stupendous gift we've got in the first place. That we have done nothing to earn. We have just been given this amazing life. We're just lucky. And we know Surbiton is okay. It's not the Taj Mahal, but Surbiton is a lovely place to live. We have so much going for us. To start nitpicking about little things which are getting on our wick is just pathetic, really. And it's showing such a lack of failure of empathy that is a failure, a deeper failure of our humanity, because if we had recognised our true indebtedness and the fact that with this amazing life we've made a bit of a muddle of it, because most of us do, and if we think, well, we're muddling along making mistakes all the time, then hopefully we should recognise that we should be more forgiving of the other people who are making mistakes which cost us. And it's a sort of permanent try and get into us a mindset of forgiveness, and that can build the kingdom of heaven.